Thank you all for coming. I guess Sammy's given you a brief introduction to who I am. So I started out trying to be a human rights lawyer. So I worked in Africa at the High Court of Zimbabwe. I worked in The Hague at the War Crimes Tribunal for Yugoslavia. And then I went to New York and started a big law firm and started doing corporate finance and M&A. But because of my background, one of my clients the whole time was the United Nations Global Compact, which is one of the foundational corporate responsibility initiatives, as was just mentioned by our prior speaker. So I've been active with the Global Compact since 2002, so for more than 20 years. And I also helped set up the Principles for Responsible Investment, which has over, I think, $120 trillion in assets under management. And that's investors aligned for creating a more sustainable world. I moved out to Singapore to kind of put the two together in impact investment, using investment tools, all this hard-headed stuff in New York about M&A and corporate finance, trying to make a better world. And as Roberta here in the front row is aware, I'm still very involved in business and human rights, in particular the last few years in China, the situation with the Uyghurs, and in Malaysia with migrants, because one of my clients is a solar company. So what I've done here today, it's a lawyer talk. I recognize most of the people aren't going to be lawyers, so it's not very legalistic. It's a lot of content. Please stop me whenever you want to, but hopefully it should be quite interesting. Because what I've tried to do is just do a big survey for all of you, give you some ideas of the trends going on around the world, and then hopefully you can get something out of it, maybe do more research, ask a question, come up to me after, connect to me on LinkedIn. Hopefully this is the beginning of a conversation. So where does the right to a clean environment come from? I mean, in one sense, you can go back to like the 10 Commandments and the right not to be killed, because obviously the environment, if it's not healthy, can kill you. But as an international system, it really started growing up after World War II. With all the atrocities that happened in World War II, one of the things that came out of it was in 1948, you had the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is actually the most translated document in human history. It's been translated into like every language. It's the first thing that they translate for tribes. And importantly for us here today talking about the environment, the UDHR doesn't specifically talk about the environment and a right to an environment, but it has a lot of positive rights. The right to life, the right not to be enslaved, things like this, which can be translated into a right to environment. And in fact, courts today are holding that the right to life means that it's by incorporation, the right to a clean environment. But importantly for specifically the Work and Impact Investment Exchange, it has not only what we call negative rights, the right not to be enslaved, it also has positive rights, which is the right to dignified labor, the right to time off, the right to education. And all these positive rights, I would argue, mean that you have a right to have healthy development, which is part of what we're here to talk about today, which is climate justice. So UDHR, foundation for both climate justice and not being killed, but also climate justice in terms of having clean development and having that kind of technology transfer. So since then, there have been all these international conventions. I'm old enough to remember the Rio one and then the Paris Agreement. These obviously were COPs previously, and we're here at the AlterCOP. So those built up environmental rights. Then you have all these regional frameworks for human rights. These are important. There's been a recent case that just came down in Switzerland. What happened in Switzerland was you had all these elderly women who sued the Swiss government because it was getting really hot in Switzerland, and this was affecting their ability to have a healthy life. So they sued the Swiss government for not having responsible environmental practices, not protecting their life. The Swiss government said, no, Swiss government's doing fine. So what the Swiss women did was they took them to the European Court of Human Rights, which is in Strasbourg. And that court found that actually the Swiss government had violated these women's right to a healthy environment. So that's where these international bodies come in and can actually come in over the national bodies. Now, of course, most laws are made at the national level. Singapore, most countries, obviously you have a Department of the Environment. They set standards for effluent and all that kind of stuff. So governments are all having that at that level, environmental laws. And then you also have lawyers, especially, I'm an American lawyer, but lawyers love to come up with ways to apply legal theories to different problems. And so a lot of what you see in terms of climate litigation is lawyers taking all these theories and figuring out how to use them for climate litigation. Just quickly, in 2022, the United Nations finally came around to having something called the right to a healthy environment and passed this statute. So that has both substantive rights, which is a right to safe climate, clean air, healthy ecosystems, safe water, healthy food, non-toxic environment. So that's all great. These are all these ideas. But then you also have to have procedures in order, what do we actually do in order to enforce that. So that's why you have access to information, public participation, and access to justice. Climate justice is the topic of the day, and lawyers have been very involved in that. What does climate justice mean? It means it's a concept that addresses the ethical, social, and political dimensions of climate change, emphasizing the fairness. And this has actually been very big at all these COPs before, because what you have is the developed countries arguing that, oh no, we need to keep the CO2 level low. And then you have these countries, particularly India has been very strong making this argument in the past, that wait, we haven't even had a chance to industrialize yet. So it's not fair for us to have to be held to all these environmental standards that European countries didn't have to abide by when they were developing at that time. And so this is getting back to the right to actually develop as a society. So the key themes of climate justice are disparities of impact. So this definitely happens also within countries, that very often poorer communities wind up being where you have the dirtier environmental activities. You have intergenerational justice, which is it fair for us today to live high on the hog and then tell all of our children growing up, oh no, you can't do what we did when we were there. Is that really fair to the future generations? And then you have the concept of a global responsibility. Of course, we're all here on the same planet. There are a lot of legal theories for climate justice and for holding people account for climate justice. One is just the basic human rights, which we started out with, the right to life, the right to healthy development. All of this is affected by an environment that's not clean. Then you can go to environmental law principles. So one basic principle of environmental law is the polluter pays principle, which is essentially just that if you've caused damage, then you have to rectify that damage. And another one is what's called the precautionary principle, which is preventing that damage from happening in the first place. And trying to, that's a lot of what we're doing with climate change right now, and saying, listen, we're gonna get to 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees, so you need to stop doing this now and not wait till afterwards and then pay some kind of reparations. And then you have transitional justice, which is very much, during this whole transition period, how do we treat people the right way? And so that's where I do a lot of the work on business and human rights in terms of making sure that we have a just transition where people's human rights are respected while we move towards all these clean technologies, and why it's so important to not only make, for instance, solar panels, an industry I've been working in, but make solar panels without having forced labor in that whole supply chain to make sure everybody is treated fairly throughout this process. Okay, so that's a lot of information. This is high level about some of the climate litigation trends going on around the world. This is from some legal articles that I've gleaned. It's obviously putting this all in baskets between legal systems of 200 countries. These are the best statistics we have. So 70% of the cases are actually against governments, people suing governments, like I mentioned with the Swiss women, saying the governments aren't doing their responsibility to the populations as far as keeping them from climate change. And then 30% are against corporations. I think it's pretty clear in terms of at least the publicity. Obviously, the oil companies get all the bad publicity. They've been clearly producing a lot of the emissions, so hence a lot of the cases are against oil companies. There's also been a huge amount of climate litigation against financial institutions, and for a lot of that's ESG litigation for them misleading, but then also cases against them for funding bad actors. So a lot of cases against banks, against investment funds. And then you have, sorry to single out McKinsey here, I guess I really only want to mention my name. But you also have professional services firms that get sued as well. So there's a case where McKinsey got brought in because McKinsey is advising the oil companies on how to kind of keep drilling, without getting into trouble. That advice is seen as dangerous for the environment. So who's actually bringing the cases? A huge amount of the cases are brought by NGOs. So you have all these NGOs. There's Client Earth. We have Elizabeth Wu. She's in Singapore. She can't be here today. But they're NGOs that go around figuring out how can we sue all these bad actors. A lot of that's strategy to get PR. Back in the day, people used to put posters on the side of Greenpeace and stop boats from doing things, and NGOs want to get publicity. So this is a good way of doing it, but also it holds people account. There's also a lot of governments going after bad actors, particularly in Brazil, as we'll get to later. And then even there's a lot of shareholders that are suing companies for these actions, because a lot of these cases that we're going to get into, being a bad actor is actually bad for business. So you have the shareholders actually suing the management for being involved in bad activities for the environment. So here's a global map of climate litigation. I guess we were talking before about climate justice. You see, actually, most of it right now is concentrated in the more developed countries. So US, Australia, UK, Germany. Brazil, as I mentioned, has a huge amount of litigation because the Amazon's huge and there's been a lot of destruction there. So there's been a lot of activity for people bringing lawsuits about what's happening in Brazil. You can see here that there's been a huge increase of litigation over time. So it's a tool that's being more and more used. And then that one is the breakdown of the North versus the South. So these two slides I can go through pretty quickly. It's a bit legalistic, but these are some of the legal theories that people are using right now to sue corporations and governments. So the government framework case is just people suing governments and saying the governments aren't protecting the people as they have a right, as they have obligation to do. Same for integrating climate considerations cases, saying that governments and also corporations, the climate is changing, so you need to integrate that. And if you're not doing it, you're not doing your duty to the people. They're polluter pays cases, which is kind of a simple principle. Corporate framework cases, people suing companies for having the wrong frameworks. Failure to adapt cases, which is saying that people aren't taking the right considerations into account. Transition risk, climate washing cases, and then turning off the taps cases, which is suing financial institutions to stop funding all these projects that are producing all the bad effects for the environment. So now I'm going to get into a lot more some specific cases. So that was kind of some high-level theory, and now we can dig into some actual cases. By all means, I think Sammy's got a question meter. If you want to ask any questions, you can type them into your phone or just raise your hand. So the first case study would be of a Dutch NGO. This is an NGO called Urgenda. And so they were the first one to bring one of these cases against the government. What they did was they sued the Dutch government for failing in its duty to protect its citizens from climate change. And they actually were successful and caused the Dutch government to reevaluate some of its policies and take into account climate change more in the way the Dutch government was approaching regulation. So this framework that was initiated by this Urgenda Foundation in the Netherlands has been replicated around the world, from Pakistan to New Zealand, lots of places in between, including the same kind of legal theory by the Swiss grandmothers I was talking about before. This case right here of the Peruvian farmer is a fascinating case, very much in terms of putting the whole concept of climate justice to life. And it's the case of RWE. So what you have here is a Peruvian farmer whose his farm is actually at risk of getting flooded because of climate change. And it's going to cost him a lot of money in order to kind of future-proof his plot of land against this climate change. So he's sitting here in 2010, I think is the year he brought the case, a victim of climate change. And so, he found some lawyers figuring out, okay, who should we sue for this? And so they actually decided to sue a German energy company, which is, I guess, the biggest energy company in Germany. Germany historically had a very dirty grid where there was burning coal. So what they had some scientists come in and say, this German energy company is actually responsible for almost 0.5% of global temperature rise. And so they took the case to Germany and said, listen, this German company has been burning coal since 1830, and it's caused climate change, and that's affecting me. So I want this German company to pay for the harm that's going to happen to me, which is that he has to future-proof his farm. So they did all these mathematical calculations. So it's 0.4%, 0.47% of all climate change in the world, they linked to this German energy company. And so this Peruvian farmer wanted 20,000 euros, not that much, but that's how much it was going to cost him to future-proof his farm for what this German energy company caused him. So that's a super interesting case. Obviously, it's very much of a case to bring an example, but this litigation theory can lead to a huge amount of climate justice with all of the companies that historically have caused all the climate change being held to account of it. So that is a fascinating case. Yes, it's still going on, but he's won. The last round was, I think, 2013, and he won. Yes. I think he lost, and then he won. The thing about the legal system is, kind of goes back and forth with some of these cases. So a lot of these cases are kind of still going on. But this legal theory, it's not the 20,000 euros that's important. It's this legal theory is one to watch as far as bringing into account all of the Western countries and Western companies for all the damage that they've caused, and then giving people in the global South, this guy in Peru, a way to go to Germany and bring a case against them. So it's not been finally resolved yet. I did check last night, but I think the last round, the Peruvian farmer won. Yes, hi. It's proportional justice. So you look at, obviously this case was brought, as I mentioned before, a lot of these cases are brought just for, to bring an example for the world. So the 0.4%, the 20,000 euros, correct. So his actual damage is like 800,000 euros. In reality, it wouldn't really be practical for him to go after every person who's caused climate change in the world. So what his lawyers had figured out is that I think they thought Germany was an interesting jurisdiction to bring a case to see what the German courts would say, but also this company in Germany was the most damaging in Germany that they could find. So you're right, it's not going to bring 100% of it, but it's the biggest amount that they could get, I think, from one company. Okay, so another case, this was recently happened in Australia. So this is a case in Australia where there are all these wildfires, and so an NGO was trying to protect the wildlife in Australia, and so they brought a case to the court saying, listen, this logging company needs to stop its activities because it's going to affect all these animals. And the court said, yes, they should stop all these activities. So that's an example of what's called the precautionary principle we talked about before, where the court is saying, let's stop all this devastation from happening before it happens. And so they ordered the logging activities to stop. So the next case we have is the case of the Polish directors, which is a really, really interesting case. So what happened here was that Poland historically has hosted I think, more COPs than any other country. But also they have a lot of coal production. And so the directors at this energy company in Poland decided that they were going to build a new coal power plant. Client Earth, which is one of these NGOs, which is doing all this work suing companies, they sent a letter to the board of directors telling the board of directors that if you go ahead and with this coal plant, it's not only going to be bad for the environment, but it's going to be terrible for your business because there's all these regulations coming in. There's going to be a carbon price. It's not a good time to be building coal in Poland in 2018, maybe 40 years earlier. So the directors went ahead, and then in the end, they weren't able to build the power plant. So actually, they're suing, and the investors are suing the directors for a breach of their fiduciary responsibilities. And this is a case where the coal power plant didn't get built, but the directors are actually going to get in trouble, legally, maybe having digging in their own pockets, but probably an indemnity. Because making this decision to try to go ahead with this coal power plant was actually bad for business. So a little bit about the Asian perspective. In India, the Supreme Court has held that the right to life means a right to a clean environment, which also means a right to be free from climate change. So that's the Indian court kind of reading all this stuff in. And then in both Japan and Korea, we've had youth activists bringing cases. In Japan, there's a case where the youth activists are bringing a case against the power company for all of its emissions. South Korea, there's actually a case where they won, where they sued the government for failing to protect its citizens. Another one of these cases arguably started by the Dutch case I began with. And this is a case where Korea, people are suing the Korean government, and the Korean government is found not to be fulfilling its responsibilities. I also have tried to think globally, act locally, so I've got Singapore content here as well, what's happening in Singapore. This is an interesting case in Papua New Guinea. So there was a company that was called the PNG Sustainable Development Program. They were doing gold and silver mining in Peru, but they claimed that they were doing it in a responsible way. And in fact, the court found that the way that they pursued this mining activity was exceptionally harmful to the environment and the affected communities. So actually, what they said they were going to do in terms of sustainable development wasn't actually true, because what they did was actually very harmful to the local populations. And so the local populations sued the company for misleading and for all the harm that had been done to them, because they were really harmed by the activities of this mine in their community. So they went to the Singapore court. Unfortunately, not all these cases can be winners. So Singapore court saw the issue very narrowly, and they said, actually, these people in the community, they don't have a contract with this company. The company, therefore, doesn't actually have a duty to these people because there's no actual contract between them. And so they said that there's no legal duty owed by the company to all the people being harmed in its area, because there wasn't actually a legal duty there. So I think it's an unfortunate result, but wanted to tell you the good and the bad of what's going on in climate litigation. So this is a recent case in Singapore. Now, just want to touch on some trends about what's going on in the world of climate litigation. These are the backlash cases. So it's not all, you have a bunch of lawyers trying to sue on behalf of NGOs on the one side, then you have a bunch of lawyers saying, hey, how can we stop all this? Because, lawyers get paid and they represent who they represent. So you have what are called ESG backlash cases, which is suing companies and saying that, oh, if you're taking climate into consideration, you're not actually taking profit into consideration. And so people trying to sue on the basis that actually being responsible for the environment is bad business. So you have lawsuits on both sides there. So there are cases where people are suing companies for actually pursuing environmental objectives. You have what are called SLAP cases, which I find the most annoying, because these are strategic litigation against public participation. What this is essentially people going and suing NGOs, suing activists to try to be such a nuisance to them that they can't pursue the litigation, because if they have to spend all their money defending against these lawsuits, then they can't go pursue these lawsuits. So you have some lawyers pursuing that tactic of essentially just being a nuisance to all the lawyers trying to sue the companies to put them out of business that way. You have just transition cases, which are going against on the distributional aspect, but sometimes the same theory about the people being harmed can be used the other way, that you're actually disadvantaging these people, so people use the theory the other way. And then you have what are called green versus green cases, where the reality is that not all green causes are following the same trajectory. Not people might both call themselves green, but they might be on different sides of issues. So a classic case of this would be, say, the development of a windmill, something like that, where on the one hand, you have one person saying, we need this windmill because the windmill is going to save the environment because it's creating clean energy. And on the other hand, you have people saying, no, we can't have this windmill because it's going to hurt all the birds that get killed by the windmill. So here you have activists on both sides going at each other for both what they would argue are righteous objectives, but those righteous objectives might be in conflict. This slide is some future trends to look for in climate litigation. Post-disaster cases, there's a lot more of that because there's been a lot more just natural disasters lately. I know that there's some people argue that there's no causation, but those who argue that there is a correlation and causation, there's going to be a lot of cases brought out of all these disasters happening. Ecocide is becoming more of a thing, so more natural legislatures are saying that it's a crime to do bad things for the environment. So this is something that's coming up. And then you have environmental and climate litigation synergies. So I wanted to say, first of all, any questions about that? That's, I think we've only got one more case, so hopefully that was interesting for all of you. I did want to say a few words about this organization called the Center for Climate Crime Analysis. And if you're interested, you come talk to me after because they're trying to set up in Asia. But this is an organization founded by a guy at the International Criminal Court who I've known for a long time, who decided about 10 years ago that he wanted to apply all this criminal law, which at the ICC, they're focused on war criminals, but actually apply it towards all the criminals that are despoiling the environment. So a lot of these theories can actually be used to go after people that are committing crime, that are committing crimes against the environment. So the Center for Climate Crime Analysis, what it does is supports law enforcement activities, targets economic drivers for investors, for instance, and does advocacy. So they, up till now, most of their work has been in South America. They target deforestation, financiers. They support law enforcement. I mentioned at the beginning, there's a lot of cases in Brazil, particularly law enforcement cases, and then they support indigenous communities. So what they do is they're basically just a data collection firm that tries to support all these activities. So I've got one case study for them, which is the case study of a Peruvian mine. So you've got this mining town. The mining company is a subsidiary of Glencore, which is a big company listed in Switzerland, one of the world's largest coal producers. And what they did was they established a link between the mine and all the human harm and pollution. I'm a lawyer. This is probably too technical for me, but they did remote sensing. They're actually working with NASA to do all this detective work on the deforestation. Then they've got the environmental science showing how the mine caused the pollution. Then they're able to show medical evidence that all these communities were actually harmed. And then in this particular case, they presented this in the Norwegian pension fund and they disinvested. There are other cases where they cooperated with law enforcement to sue companies. There's a famous case in France where they, there's a supermarket that's getting sued for all the deforestation in the Amazon, and that supermarket's had to stop selling beef made from that place. What's interesting, I think, about these cases and the way that their work operates, which could be very interesting for this region, is that a lot of people think, oh, I'm sitting here in Indonesia, whatever happens to me, what's the Indonesian government going to do? But what they're doing is targeting your investors, and they're targeting your consumers and going after that way. So to the extent you're part of a global supply chain, you can get caught up in this litigation, even if it's not happening in the jurisdiction you're sitting in. And you can put pressure that way through financial pressure. So any questions about that? Okay, well, let me move on to impact investment exchange.
I have a question. So I'm just thinking, like, for natural disaster, so it's actually not covered by insurance, because even insurance company cannot cover all the extent. So how do you see, like, insurance company seeing all this litigation, or how do you see private company, are they preparing themselves, or like what are they thinking about all this trend?
Very interesting question. So definitely there's a lot of lawyers that will be thinking about whenever there's damage, because when you're a lawyer, you think about a few different things. You think about, okay, who is the plaintiff? Who can bring the case? And what is the damage? So when you see a huge amount of damage, like $10 billion, oh God, there's a lot of damage. And so lawyers are going to get like 1/3 of that if they win a case. So they're going to run and figure out who they can sue. I think that there's different theories they could use. That's why I thought the RWE case in Germany is so interesting, where you find this German company that's been bellowing coal into the atmosphere for more than a century. You do that proportional thing, although obviously that's not going to recover everything. You could come up with a theory like that, and you'd have to just have scientists link the climate change to the actions of this company, and then go bring on that theory. I'm sure you could also go more locally and go into, if it's a flood in Puerto Rico, and figure, okay, who was responsible for this in Puerto Rico, and maybe the local company could have done something better, and if they did something better, they could have prevented it. But definitely lawyers, whenever you see a deep pot of money, they're going to be running to figure out who they can sue. So that's what I mentioned as an emerging trend. So I think you'll see more of that coming up. Sorry, we have one here.
Yes, I'm curious for all the companies with a net zero target, by 24 to 2050. It is expected that some of them will not manage to reach their targets. Should they fear any litigation, and who would sue them in that case? Because all those announcements of net zero, they're voluntary. It's not required by any partners.
Sure. So great question. We will get to greenwashing at the end, so we will be able to talk about that. Definitely greenwashing. It's an interesting question. Even though they've made the disclosure voluntarily, once that disclosure is out there, if it's misleading, then it could be considered a misleading communication. So I think they could be sued for it, but the question would be really, what is actually the damage it caused? So you'd actually have to be able to prove that not only was this misleading, but that it actually damaged the investor. And so I think it might be hard for the investor to establish a link between not hitting the net 50 target and then this company losing money. But I'm sure there's a lot of lawyers thinking about it. Yeah, no, it's definitely going to come. It's definitely going to come. And then that's why you have sort of the related topic between greenwashing and green hushing. So then you have all the companies that are saying, oh, I don't want to talk anymore, I'm just going to be quiet. But then actually green hushing can be misleading as well if you're not disclosing what you should be disclosing to investors. But very much, if they miss their target, they've said something misleading. The question is just going to be, what is the damage? How can I come up with a theory that there's damage to go after them? I did want to say a couple of words. This has all been, when I started out, I was talking about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So I was talking about all the negative stuff, which is the right to life, all that. This has been all these legal cases. This section is just going to be quickly talking about more positive side, which is in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, you also have the right to development, the right to education, which are these more positive rights. And after all, I'm here to talk about climate justice. That's why I thought I'd tell you a few words about the Orange movement, which Impact Investment Exchange has started. Orange comes from the Sustainable Development Goals. And this is the concept of climate justice, but then also gender equity. So it's mixing gender action and climate action together for peace and prosperity. So I've got a short video. Okay, you can stop listening to me and let's watch the video for a second. There's a nice video introducing the orange bonds, but you can see here, this is the whole wheel of the SDGs. And normally I wear my SDG pin because I worked at the UN, but orange bonds are supposed to be right there in the middle for climate justice, where you're actually doing peace building and racial equity. You've got social bonds, climate bonds, and so orange bonds are, the concept is that they're right in the middle, doing gender equity and climate. So very much climate justice, because in the past, maybe women hadn't had all the opportunities, and so this is a way to direct capital towards them for promoting climate justice. So I think it's pretty cool. So there's 3 principles. It's a new asset class. We're just doing a $150 million one right now in Kenya, India, Cambodia, Indonesia, and Philippines. So there's 3 principles, which is gender positive capital allocation, gender lens capacity, and transparency in investment and reporting. I've only got 5 minutes left, so I told you that. This one is just showing that when you have something like this for gender and equity, there's actually a super legal structure behind it. So these are all the different legal documents that come in. A lot of them are just your standard finance stuff because there's money involved, but then you have your impact monitoring and all of that kind of stuff to make sure that you actually have climate justice being done. This is a nice story from the field in the Philippines, highlighting the kind of work that we're doing on that for bringing climate justice. So now we have greenwashing and bluewashing. Greenwashing, I think we all know, is about saying sort of false things about the environment. You also have bluewashing, same thing about the UN, and certainly now that we've launched the orange bond, there's going to be orange washing coming up, no doubt. So just a couple of cases on greenwashing to bring you up to speed. So Singapore actually has a law that's being used. As I mentioned before, lawyers are pretty creative, so we don't always have to pass new laws. What we can do is repurpose old laws for new purposes. So there's the Misrepresentation Act, which says you're not allowed to make false statements about products. And so people are using that act for greenwashing in Singapore. 3 cases quickly. So the classic one is, British Petroleum, Beyond Petroleum, and then, Beyond Propaganda. So there have been cases brought against BP for trying to look like they're like a gardening company when they're an oil company. As I mentioned, there are people going after financial institutions now. And then finally, we have the exciting one of the first greenwashing case in Singapore, which is Xiao Shu. She's a local influencer. There was an advertisement with her where it says that she's Xiao Shu, we need your help to save the earth. So she was advertised as being saving the earth, and what was she doing? She was using an air conditioner that was maybe slightly more energy efficient than other air conditioners. That was found to be misleading, and so that's the first greenwashing case we have in Singapore. Yeah, well, thank you all for coming. I hope you found it informative, and you've been a great audience, so appreciate it.